Okay. So hello everyone. Hmm. Let me just fix my screen. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar Wednesday. So this is my second webinar. So it's entitled Visual Rhetoric: Persuading Through Images. Just open up the participant panel. Okay. So just a short introduction again. So I'm Miss Patrice Anti Vargas. So I'm 24 years old. I'm a graduate of Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English. And for the past 3 years, I've been handling several senior high school English subjects. So at the end of the lesson, or I mean the webinar, I am expecting you that you will learn the meaning of visual rhetoric, understand how it works, and comprehend why you should care about it, or why we are currently currently talking about it. So first question of today, of course, is what is visual rhetoric? So anybody who or what comes into your mind whenever you hear the word visual rhetoric or the words visual rhetoric, kindly type your answer in the chat box. So pag naririnig niyo yung word na visual rhetoric, ano yung um, naaalala nyo or what comes to your mind? Because for some of you, this word might be new or bago to sa inyong panrinig, pero siguro what comes to your mind pag narinig mo to kahit hindi mo siya alam? Kindly type in the chat box your answer. So what is visual rhetoric for you? Or what do you remember or what comes to mind when you hear the word or when you read the words visual rhetoric? Kindly type in the chat box your answer. Okay, so according to Lenny, it for her it is the use of image as argument. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So according to Lenny, for her is this is the use of image as an argument. Anybody? What comes to your mind when you hear the words visual rhetoric? Or anong naaalala nyo? Or ano sa tingin nyo yung meaning ng visual rhetoric? Anybody? Okay, so I guess none. No worries, let's continue. So this is a short advertisement or commercial for you to see a glimpse of what is visual rhetoric.
Hello, Philippines. 안녕하세요. 배우 현빈입니다. 이렇게 스마트와 함께하게 되어서 정말 기쁜 마음인데요. 앞으로 스마트의 가족으로 좋은 모습 보여드릴 테니 저와 스마트 모두 관심 가지고 지켜봐 주시기 바랍니다. 마을 고가요, 스마티스.
The way you live your life depends on the network you choose. Your movies, music, and games can only be as good as your network's speed and strength. Slow means Game over. But the Philippines' fastest mobile data network means
Game changing.
choose the network that gives you what you truly enjoy. How do you know about this gig of life?
Simple, smart ako.
Okay. So, as you have seen in the video, we have this known Korean star. So, me myself, I just know him by his face. So, I have watched him in multiple Korean dramas. So, that advertisement is an example of visual rhetoric. Because whenever you watch that advertisement, lalo na kung ikaw ay big K-pop fan or K-drama fan, you would be persuaded to buy Smart kasi ina-advertise niya yung Smart. Sinabi niya pa yung words na mahal ko kayo. So, you would be persuaded to buy Smart because this certain artist is an ambassador of the Smart company. So, and let's divide the two words. So rhetoric is the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. So technically, rhetoric means persuading or persuasive. It's either verbal or not. While visual means anything that is perceptible by the sense of sight or visible. So basically anything we see, we call that visual. So when we put that together, visual rhetoric is how we are persuaded by the things we see. So for example, we'll go back to the commercial a while ago. You will be persuaded to buy smart SIM cards because a certain person or a certain celebrity is introducing it to you. So when people talk about visual rhetoric, most of the time we are inclined to think na it's how we are being manipulated by the things we see or the things we perceive. Kasi nga, katulad nung ad kanina, for example, you have been a Globe user for few years already, pero dahil merong K-pop star na nag-advertise ng smart, you'll buy smart then. So we think that it's being manipulated. So we are being manipulated, we are being used by certain companies so that we will or tatangkilikin natin yung products nila. But visual rhetoric is much more than being manipulated by an image you see. Because visual rhetoric refers to how we interpret and make meaning out of anything else. So it's not just we being persuaded by, but also we interpreting a certain material, a certain image that we see, and that's the time we think if we will be or kung bibilin natin to or hindi. So we are not just being manipulated, but we ourselves also make meaning. Dahil, for example, dahil idol mo yung tao na yun, kaya mo siya bibilin. So that's your interpretation, that's your meaning kung bakit mo tatangkilikin ng isang bagay. Not just because you were manipulated, but because idol mo yung nag-a-advertise nito. So this is an example of how visual rhetoric works. So it starts with our eyes. So it starts with our eyes. Then we go to visual inputs. When we mean visual inputs, these are the things we see. So just like color, layout, shapes, typography, nature, architecture and etc. Yung etc. for example, yun nga artist, we see beautiful images of the light. Then after seeing the visual input, our make meaning and our interpretation depends on the contextual filters. So what do we mean by contextual filters? Yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. Depende siya kung idol mo yun, kung fan ka nun. So just like you're being filtered by media, language, culture, education, timing, life experience, expectations, and genre. So balik tayo dun sa commercial ng Smart, then i-connect natin siya sa expectations. Because we know, data in the Philippines is not that great kahit i-compare natin siya sa Wi-Fi. So, Philippine data is still a little low. Pero dahil dun sa advertisement ni Smart, magsa-stop na daw yung slow mo pag ginagamit mo yung SIM nila. So, that's expectation. So, you're expecting that Smart will perform better than other SIM cards. So, that's why you will be buying it. Or that's a contextual filter. For example, second one is media. So when we mean media, for example, you see it on the internet, you see it on the TV. So you see it in different forms of media. That's why you will be able to be persuaded. Third one um, will go with genre, because the genre would be K-pop or K-drama. So most people now are a fan of K-drama. So most practically that would be a part of your decision making or interpretation and make meaning whenever you would want to be persuaded by something. Then we have persuasion channels. So we have reason, emotion, and credibility. So we'll discuss this more as we go along with this webinar. Then that's the time it comes to our brain, or it's the time that we make meaning and we also decide if we will be persuaded or not. So what is visual rhetoric exactly? So visual rhetoric is a part of communication process where we interpret and make meaning out of the world around us. So we must be reminded that we have two kinds of communication. We have verbal and non-verbal. So visual rhetoric somehow is connected to non-verbal because you just see something, then that's the time you communicate. And it's not technically that you are communicating with the other person, but you could also be communicating to a thing, a commercial, or just something, for example, a color that would interpret something in your life. So visual rhetorics provides a space. So ano yung space na yon? Nakita nyo kanina dun sa ating example, yung bago mapunta yung nakita natin sa ating brain, it would go through a lot of process or interpretation and make meaning. So that's the space. We are provided time to think, to decide if we will do this or not. And that space is affected by complex variables. Yun yung sinasabi natin kanina na it would be affected by depending on the genre, depending on who advertised this, what did you see, what is the interpretation of this thing in your life. So that's the complex variable. So Aristotle once said that rhetoric is observing in any case the available means of persuasion. Aristotle is telling us that we first observe something, then we would proceed to persuading. So for example, in commercials, alam natin na ang commercials is most of the time, they are changing their commercials at least yearly. Kasi syempre, yung mga gusto ng tao last year, hindi naman same ng gusto nila this year. Katulad na lang ng mga commercials ngayon, most of them are connecting it to the pandemic because that is what we are currently experiencing. So we observe what the people are into, what they are currently experiencing, then that's the time we form something that would persuade them to use, to buy, to look at whatever the thing that we are doing. In other words, if you want to persuade someone to think or act a certain way, you choose appropriate words, organization, style, framing, and so forth to convince them. So, syempre, hindi naman natin mako-convince ang isang tao kung ang gagamitin nating tono is hindi siya respectful or hindi siya appropriate. So, for example, when you're asking your parents for example, ma, pa, kailangan ko ng ganito, kailangan ko ng ganda, ng ganito, ng ganyan. So, hindi mo naman siya sasabihin in a form na masungit, na pasigaw. You will say it in a way that is calm, na pa-sweet, na paawa, kasi kailangan na kailangan mo yung isang bagay. Lalo na kung hindi mo naman siya talaga needs, but nonetheless, a want. So whenever you want others to be persuaded, you act properly and appropriate to the current situation that you would like them to be persuaded in. So with visual rhetoric, you choose visual means of persuading. So for example, hindi tayo nagsasalita, you just, for example, you just let your parents see na nahihirapan ka kasi may hindi ka nabili na kailangan mo. So that's visual means without words itself. For example, also, when you make faces sa kausap mo dahil, for example, naiinis ka or you don't understand them, you know that we have a face na nakikita ng isang tao when we do not understand something or we are or irritable na tayo. So that's also visual rhetoric because you do not use words but rather you use your facial expression. So also, we could use visual expressions when it comes to layout, colors, and style. These are the times, syempre, most of you teenagers are used kayo sa editing photos pag maybe nabati kayo na happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy monthsary. So you use layouts, colors, and style to express your message to a certain person. So this is also a type of visual um, interpretation that we would be able to give to others by visual rhetoric. And with this type of visual interpretation, the other person will also be able to interpret if it's fun, boring, worthwhile, credible, or a waste of time. Siyempre, meron tayong mga ginagawa na talagang mapapansin. Lalo na if you are making an activity for a school, for example, school activity or school project, yung mga essays nyo sa Quipper, a teacher could know if you are having or if you have interest in what you're doing because we could see that in the way you write. So for example then, pag nasa klase kayo, whenever you don't participate, lalo na ngayon na online class, diba? It's hard really to see students, pero you could know how they feel whenever they recite kasi yung tone of voice nila. So that is part of being visual, lalo na ngayon na we are all inside the internet and we cannot see each other face to face. So they make an impression based on what they see and what they are persuaded to feel a certain way about. So, syempre, for example, tayo, yung giver ng message, si receiver, siya na yung gagawa ng interpretation. So, we would always be reminded that each person has different perspectives and experiences. So, maybe ang interpretation nito sa'yo is masaya, but the interpretation for the other person would be sad. And that's fine because we are going through different experiences in our lives and also we have different perspectives or we have different ways on how we see something. For example, the color, when you see the color red, for you that's love, but for the other person, when they see red, it's blood or something. So that's okay because we have different ways on understanding something. So the problem is sometimes you communicate visually without even realizing it. So this is the main reason why I am explaining you or making you know what visual rhetoric is so that you would not think that you are just doing something ordinary. Actually, this is something that we use or do on a daily basis We just don't know what it is called. So of course, when we use color design and fonts, this is also visual rhetoric because everybody could interpret something. So for example, itong slide ko na to, you could clearly see that this took time kasi instead of putting words just like the last slide, I put pictures also so that you would clearly understand what I meant. So as you can see, when we use different color design and fonts, we could go ahead and also make the person feel uplift or even sad depending on what your theme is about. So for example, look at what you're wearing right now. It says a lot about your age, gender, social status, financial situation, personality, or something else. So let's look at the pictures below. So is the what do you think is the age of the person in the green dress? So what do you think is their age? Kindly type your answers in the chat box. What do you think is the age range of the people here in the pictures below? What are their age range? The girl in green, what do you think is her age? The girl in pink, the guy in black, in polo. So what do you think is the difference or their difference? So 20 plus, the green. Okay. Maybe the 20 plus, the green. Yes. How about the one in pink? What do you think is her age? So 8. Okay. Maybe 8. Okay. How about the one in the black t-shirt? What's the age? Okay. So as you can see, all of these pictures below, 18, teenager, okay, pwede. So as you can see, these various pictures below, we could see different age range, we could see different social status or financial status, depending on what they wear. Aminin nyo man or hindi, whenever we go out, nung wala pang pandemic, nung hindi tayo naka-quarantine, whenever we see someone, we somehow think or communicate within ourselves kung ano sila, like anong ilang taon na sila, what's their social status. Kasi parang we interpret the way they look on these few things. So for example, the girl in green, we could think na she is around 20 plus years old and she is already working. The same with the guy in the polo. So as you can see, as simple as what you wear could tell something about yourself. So that is a part of visual rhetoric. Because whenever we see someone, we could think na, ooh, ang ganda nila, they dress well, it seems like may kaya sila sa buhay, and something like that. So, that's the beauty of visual rhetoric. Yes, lalo na pa interesado ka sa tao. 'Di ba mahilig kayo niyan eh. Magsustalk kayo sa Facebook niya, then you will see their photos. Titignan mo doon, ano ba yung style niya, where does he go frequently, kung paano siya mag-post. Alam niyo yun, when, parang last year yata yun, there was a genre that everyone was taking a picture that they are pouting. So yung duck face. So when you see that, parang nakikita mo din na makikita mo if bagay sa kanila or hindi. So that's a part of visual rhetoric. It's just yourself. So it's your interpretation of something that you see. So, but you don't know exactly how someone interprets you because it changes depending on the person and the situation. So ito ulit tayo. There are a lot of people and we don't have the same interpretations of something. We have different perspectives. So how we interpret someone might be different to someone else. So for example, kayo 'di ba, kayo magkaibigan, nagpunta kayo somewhere, then yung kaibigan mo nakakita siya ng pogi, then sasabihin niya sa'yo, "Uy, ang pogi nung guy na ganito, ganyan." But then, when you yourself see the person, sasabihin mo, hindi naman ganun ka-pogi. Okay? So that's a part of having different perspectives. So we have different ways on how we interpret stuff. And that's okay because we have um, our own experiences, our own contextual filters that affects our judgment. So the fact is, visual rhetoric or the way people interpret message by what they see is affected by a whole host of things. So maraming bagay. So doon ulit papasok yung contextual filters. So we are being affected by contextual filters. So for example, by media, by language, by culture, education, timing, life experience, expectations, and genre. So just like whenever we pick a movie to watch in the cinema, so pipiliin mo yung movie na sa tingin mo hindi masasayang yung pera mo. So how do you decide on that? Siyempre depende yun sa yung genre, depende sa culture ng movie, depende sa expectations mo dun sa movie, kasi nga ang expectation mo is hindi masasayang yung pera na ibabayad mo. Then also your timing. So when we mean timing, if at this current moment, ito yung nafe-feel mong panoorin. Kasi 'di ba there's a time in our lives that we feel watching happy movies, great movies. Pero there are also time that we would want to watch romantic or sad movies because we want our mood to be reflected in whatever we watch. So in other words, context plays a huge role in what people will understand. Visual rhetoric, in essence, is the meaning that comes as a result of what we see affected by context. So kung kanina we just say that visual rhetoric is the um, is that we are persuaded by whatever we see. But now we mean that visual rhetoric is the meaning comes as a result of what we see affected by context. Kasi nga, sabi ko kanina, visual rhetorics create a space that is affected by complex variables, and those complex variables are the filters or the contextual filters. So how does visual rhetoric work? So we'll just explain it to you thoroughly. Whenever we look at something, visual rhetoric is already in play. So for example, at the current moment, when you are seeing my slide, so you are contemplating, you are communicating with yourself. If you are still, if you would want to still continue with the webinar, or you would just like to leave. Because as you could see, I did not put anything like pictures in most of my slides because that's a part of visual rhetoric. I would want to know how you would react to certain colors only or just the layout of the thing itself. So we look at the way things are designed and we make judgments about them. Our judgments come as a result of our past experience, education, age, life experience, but our judgments are also affected by timing. So this is an example, but let's go back first. So, kung kanina we say that visual rhetoric is the thing that comes after we make feeling that we make meaning rather affected by context or contextual filters. And now we make judgment after making meaning. Siyempre, nasa brain na natin. So now we make meaning na. We now interpret if it's beautiful, if it's not, if it's great, if it's good, if it's bad. And that judgment is a result of few things. First example is past experience. So again, we have different experiences in life. So we might interpret something different from others. Education, when we mean education, your knowledge of how things are supposed to be done or the things that are right. Then age. Syempre may mga thing na interested lang yung mga matatanda. Then merong mga things na mga teenagers or bata lang yung may gusto or nakakaintindi. Then also life experience. So what you are currently feeling. That's why it's also affected by timing. Because the past education and age would be affected by what you are feeling at the current moment. So if you're feeling sad, you would certainly have a judgment that is different when you are happy. So as an example, if you watch a comedy about a funeral, it may be funny until you have a loved one die. The movie may suddenly become offensive, your judgment has been shifted by life experience and timing. Kasi nung unang nood mo nung movie, um, funny siya, nakakatawa siya. So it's something that lifts your spirit. But then because you have lost someone important in your life, that's the time you shift because of the timing. Because currently you are sad. So now it becomes offensive. So as you can see, your judgment is shifted depending on the timing or what you are currently feeling. So everything you see has been designed and each of those designs say something to you personally. Kasi nga, we interpret things different from the other people. That's why everything seems to be personal. So for example, when you see the color blue, for me, it's my favorite color. So that for me, it interprets as a happy color. But for you, blue may mean something sad, just like the raindrops. So what you determine the design says to you is affected by anything from your personal taste to your expectations. So same thing, just like kanina. So everything is always affected by anything that you are currently experiencing and your expectations. So yun yung mga pinapakita sa atin sa mga advertisement na minsan parang iisipin mo na um, parang hindi siya makakatotohanan na parang, uy, hindi naman mangyayari yan, parang joke. So that's the time where education and expectation comes in. Because you know that this wouldn't work because of your knowledge of something that is true and right, and your expectations mo na parang it's too much to be true. It's too good to be true. So internally, after making this judgment, you determine three things about what you see. If it's credible, how it makes you feel, and if it makes sense. So if it's credible, how you feel, and if it makes sense. So this is what we call the rhetorical triangle. So we have ethos, pathos, and logos. So ethos for credibility, pathos for emotion, then logos for logic. So as a reminder, this three things does not just appear in visual rhetoric. It appears in different things like philosophy, you might hear that, and also in the world of law, it's also there. Because this is important. You must be credible, it must appeal to your emotion, and it must be true. So, when we mean credible, it could be that thing, katulad kanina, balik na lang tayo dun sa commercial para mas maintindihan nyo. Ethos, the credibility is it was advertised by a well-known artist. So it's credible. You think it's credible. And also, you know that Smart is a current network provider in the Philippines. And that is also credibility na hindi siya kumakain ng load just like other network providers. Next is pathos. It has an effect on your emotions. So what is the example of those pathos in the commercial of Smart? It was that kinilig ka kasi ang daming close-up shot nung K-pop, K-drama artist or Korean artist. So, ang dami niyang close-up shot that he looks really good. So, it impacts your emotion na it makes you kilig. Then, it also makes you happy because he was advertising this stuff. Then, logic is that you would be thinking na katulad ng sinabi nila, the data would work properly. So, dun papasok si logic. Because you will always question if that is true or not. So, we might believe it kasi sinabi naman niya kanina it was LTE, not more 4G. So, pag sinabi kasi natin LTE, it's the most current data that is good or that would work properly. So, that is logos. So, as you can see, the smart commercial has these three things. It was credible, it appeals to our emotion, and it was logically possible. That's why at the end of this, your interpretation or your judgment could be that you would buy a smart SIM card. So now I'd be asking you to watch this commercial, and later on I will be asking you what do you think was the ethos, what is the pathos, and what was the logos in this advertisement.
Hey kid, we short a guy. Want to run? All right.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird's a word, when a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a word, when a bird, bird, bird. When a bird is a word, when a bird.
Hey kid, we're short a guy. Want to run?
When a bird is a word, when a bird, bird.
Hey kid! We're short a guy. You're up. Start!
稽古に行くんだけど一人足りないんだ。
We're short a guy. Let's go.
Kid, we're short a guy. You're at midi. Let's go.
Hey kid, dry up. We're short a guy.
Hey kid, what are you doing? We're short a guy. Put this on. Triple right, 2 jet flanker drive F short. Ready?
Wait, what?
9 for 70. Where's he going?
Yo, kid, where you been? The shorter guy. You want to run?
All right.
Well, everybody's heard.
Everybody find some shade and a glass of lemonade.
Okay. So that was a Nike commercial back in 2016. So now, raise of hands. Sige, I would like to hear your voice. Anybody here who has the answer? What do you think to the question? What do you think was the ethos or the credibility and ethics in the video or in the advertisement? Raise of hands sa Zoom, or you could type your answer in the chat box, whatever you prefer. So what was the ethos? What was the pathos? Then what was the logos? So what was the credibility and ethics? What was something that has appealed to your emotion? And what was logical? Anybody? Raise of hands lang sa Zoom or kindly type your answers in the chat box. We'll wait for your answer for, I guess, a minute or 60 seconds. So, what appealed to you or what was credible in the video that I just showed you? What appealed to your emotions? And what do you think it was logical or it was true or it was reasonable? So, nagagawa ba siya on a normal basis, on a normal, can a normal person do that kind of thing? Because in the video, as you have seen, the kid has played several sports, just like beach volleyball, basketball, baseball. I guess that was baseball or football. Then he has running or triathlon. So he did a lot of sports in just a span of 2 minutes. So do you think that was logical? Then for credible, what gave you the credibility, or what do you think have show? What do you think was the part in the video that shows that it was credible? Then what appealed to your emotions or your feelings? So kindly type your answer in the chat box or raise the hand sa Zoom. Anyone? Raise the hand sa Zoom or kindly type your answers in the chat box. Anybody? Lenny, maybe you have an answer. Can you unmute? Lenny, we have here also Jaisel, Jamaica, Toledo. Oh, we have a chat from Lenny. Okay. Lenny said, yung emotions daw is naguluhan daw siya nung una, then nung dulo, parang dun lang siya hanggang sa dulo lang daw siya nagkaroon ng interest. Then, at the end of the video, hindi naman din daw siya ganun ka-interesado. So maybe because it was talking about sports. That's why. So anybody else? So that was the pathos for Lenny. So it did not really appeal to her emotions practically. So wala hindi naman daw siya interesado and naguluhan siya. So that was Lenny's pathos. Anyone else? What was your what do you think was the ethos and the logos in the video? I could play the video again for you so that you could rewatch it for the second time.
Hey, kid, we short a guy. Want to run? All right.
Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird's a word, well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a word, well, a bird, bird, bird. Well, a bird is a word, well, a bird.
Hey, kid, we're short a guy.
Want to run?
Well, a bird is a word, well, a bird, bird.
Hey, kid! We're short a guy. You're up.
稽古に行くんだけど一人足りないんだ。
We're short a guy. Let's go.
Kid, we're short a guy. You're at midi. Let's go.
Hey, kid, dry up. We're short a guy.
Hey, kid, what are you doing? Short a guy. Put this on. Triple right, 2 jet, flanker drive F short. Ready?
Wait, what?
9 by 69 for 70. Where's he going?
Yo, kid, where you been? The shorter guy. You want to run?
All right.
Well, everybody's heard
Everybody find some shade and a glass of lemonade.
Okay, so we have another answer here from Lemmy. So she thinks the logos was parang yung sinasabi doon, ma'am, na pag ginamit mo yung sapatos na Nike, magiging productive ka. Okay, so that was the logic or reasoning behind the advertisement. So thank you, Lenny. So in simpler terms, the credibility there or the ethos there was the advertisement used a lot of known personality sa sports. Yung ano pa lang yung sumo wrestler pa lang dun sa bus, he was a well-known person kasi lumalabas din siya sa mga movies. Then yung last na tall na guy, that was a well-known also NBA player. So that was that is what gives the credibility. Because just like the smart commercial, they have used well-known people to advertise the product for them. Then yung emotions doon, aside from magulo siya, which is true, the second thing there is they are calling the kid, hey, short guy. So, kasi short lang siya, maliit lang siya. But what appealed for the emotion in that advertisement is that it was um, it was telling us that even if you're short, you could do anything you want or you could. Just like sports. Kasi sa sports, pag maliit ka, parang hindi siya advisable na kunin for well-known sports. Pero sa basketball, recently, nakikita nila yung use or useful din yung mga short people because they could easily, nakakapasok sila easily sa mga, or nakakalusot easily sa mga kalaban. Then the logos there, may point si Lenny na, let's just go back. Ginagamit mo yung sapatos for your productivity. One more logic or reasoning doon na maiisip mo is that really possible to do all those kind of stuff in few minutes or in just one day? So yun yung iisipin mo. Then yung judgment and meaning mo or yung interpretation mo will come out depending on these three main things. So, kung sa logic, naisip mo na hindi naman possible yon, your judgment could be that you wouldn't still buy Nike or Nike. So, that is ethos, pathos, and logos or the rhetoric triangle. So, now we will go to the question, what is not visual rhetoric? So, some might argue that if visual rhetoric starts with the things we see, then everything must be visual rhetoric. So, we might ask ourselves, so lahat ng nakikita natin, we're doing visual rhetoric? The answer there is maybe. So, when you see a tree or a rock, is that visual rhetoric? So, that could be a visual rhetoric if you communicate with the thing. Kasi minsan when we look at a tree, it could just be a tree. Pero there are some moments that when we look at a tree, we would suddenly be interpreting it as beautiful o kaya it's already old. So that could be a communication that you made and that is visual rhetoric. Then for rocks, yes, that could also be a visual rhetoric because when you see rocks, you communicate or you interpret it as it could be it's small, it's the color is different, or it's smooth or something. That could also be visual rhetoric as long as you are communicating with it. Same with a chair and also a tall building. Because whenever we see a tall building, we might interpret it as scary. Parang nakakatakot pumasok doon. So when you make that interpretation, that could be visual rhetoric. But visual rhetoric is just a really when you intend to communicate with something, just like an advertisement on or a report. Then when you interpret it, visual rhetoric is the root of most communication. So when you interpret or you intend to communicate with something, yes, that could be visual rhetoric. But if you do not want to interpret with something, that is also what is not visual rhetoric. So Lenny has something to add up. For example daw, pag umuulan, sa iba hindi nila gusto or sa tingin nila ay weather lang. Pero para daw sa kanya, masarap silang tignan at pakinggan. Yes. So that's an example. So to some, rain is just a rain, water pouring, then that's it. But for you, it's a sign of peace, of relief, of calmness. That's the time when you use visual rhetoric if you're communicating with the rain. But if you're not communicating with the rain, that is what is not visual rhetoric. So you see that visual rhetoric is just when you intend to communicate with something. Because we almost see everything before we understand it, with the exception, of course, of music and sound, we are always being affected by visual rhetoric. So everything we see, because the most used sense in our body would be the sense of sight. Because we first see something before we touch it, before we eat it, or before we smell it, we first see it. 'Di ba nga, pag may parang nakikita mo yung isang bagay if sira na siya, if bulok na siya, if expired na siya. So you see it first before you use the other sense. So that's the time you use visual rhetoric. So yes, you do not use visual rhetoric 24/7 a day, but you use it every day. So now we answer the question, why should you care about visual rhetoric? Or Miss Pat, why are you even discussing this? So whether you thought about it much or not, you create visual things at all times, like the typography, font size, spelling, headings, and even colors. And as I've said a while ago, even your facial expressions or the way you dress, you make visual things. So you make visual things every day. For example, when you choose what t-shirt to wear, what short to wear, what would your hair look like today? Will you put it in a bun? Will you put it in a ponytail? Or will you just let it, or ilulugay mo lang? So, you make visual things on a daily basis. And also, lalo na currently we are in a pandemic, we usually message people lang through chat or email. So, we also do visual things with those. So, for example, when you make yung mga essay nyo, 'di ba, you use the default version. As a reminder, yung essay part sa Quipper, you can change your font size, your font style, you could bold things or pwede mong lakihan or i-highlight yung bagay doon. So you could do that. But even if you just use your default, for example, default font size in your Quipper essays, that is also a visual thing. So you send your teacher something by that. 'Di ba? May mga essays naman na pinapagawa yung teachers nyo. Whatever you write in there, that is also a reflection of you. Your may it be your little design knowledge, little creativity, and little effort. Little, small to big effort, knowledge, and creativity could be seen in anything you do. So how you design the thing in your life will say a lot about you, even if you don't realize it. So how you present yourself, kasi nga we don't know how other people interpret us, or when they see us, what do they see or what do they think we are. We should always know that we are making a visual image that is us, or we are being reflected in whatever we do. May it be an assignment, how you write, how you speak, how you act, how you react. So everything is um, a reflection of who you are. So the way your food looks when a guest come over, the cleanliness of your car or your house or your bed or your room when friends get in, the post-its over your computer at your workspace, this all suggests something to someone that you are persuading them to think a certain way. So for example, 'di ba, pag may na pag meron kang, for example, you're meeting a person for the first time. So you dress well, you put on a little makeup, or you comb your hair, you wax it. You want other people to be persuaded that this is how you look, that this is you. So that is also visual rhetoric. You want others to see that you are clean, you are um, nice, you are accommodating, you are hospitable. So that is a reflection of you. So everything you do, when some people interpret it, that is you. That is a reflection of you. So the more you recognize it, what you want others to see, and which available means are most appropriate in any given situation, the more your visual rhetoric will work in your favor. So when you realize, ito yung pinaka-point on why I am interpreting this, or I am telling you what visual rhetoric is that I want you to realize that whatever you let other people see is dahil yun lang yung available means mo, or yun lang yung available stuff, available clothes, works, attitude na meron ka na alam mong gawin or gamitin. And that is also, if you realize what you want others to see, or what's your purpose of letting them hear this, letting them read this, or letting them see this, that's the time that visual rhetoric works in your favor. Kasi alam mo na ang ginagamit mo is yung kung ano lang yung meron ka, at kung ano lang kung sino ka talaga. So that's an important thing when it comes to visual rhetoric. So I will be leaving you a quote. The law of perceptual problem solving, or peekaboo, should now make more sense. It may have evolved to ensure that the search for visual solutions is inherently pleasurable rather than frustrating, so that you don't give up too easily. Because um, us as being very dependent in the internet, we sometimes get information online kahit hindi siya credible, because we don't know how to check its credibility. At least ngayon, you would know the three things to remember whenever you see something or you are communicating with something. So it needs to have ethos, pathos, and logos. Credibility, it must appeal to your emotion, and it's logical. So for example, may nakita kang site online, you would see that it's fun, parang magulo siya, hindi siya official. So makikita mo yon, then you would know that this is not a credible place. And the things there, lalo na pag nakita mo yung Wikipedia, it looks credible, pero pagdating mo sa logos, sa logic, hindi siya logical because anyone can change it. Lalo na pagdating mo sa pinakadulong slide, you would see there that click here if you want to edit the information above. So if you want to solve problems, knowing that you are using visual rhetoric and finding visual solutions would be more fun than frustrating. So mas maiintindihan mo na why you are doing this process bago ka mag-make ng judgment or bago ka mag-interpret. So it's pleasurable rather than frustrating, so that you wouldn't give up too easily. So just like actually this webinar is connected to my past webinar. So how would you be able to write a journal, an ebook, or a um, a diary? All you need to do is to look um, about to look at things around you, to look at the available things around you. Get inspiration there, and that's the time you write it down so that the other people could also interpret and make meaning out of the thing you have written about. So that is all for today. I hope you have got something with our webinar. And thank you for attending today's webinar. I really appreciate it. Thank you also. So I hope you now know what visual rhetoric means and what its important, and how you use it and what it is. And the word itself, rhetoric, could be added to your vocabulary. You have now a new word to use. So that's all. So see you again, I guess, next week's lessons and also next month's webinar. Thank you and have a great day. Please stay safe. Bye.